It's hard with little kids, right? Because the old adage is the days are long, but the years are short.
Yeah, that's what I've
is
heard.
the idea with kids. Yeah. You know, it's like when you're, especially like Laura is going to go visit her parents soon. And so this for the first time for like 3 days, I'm going to watch the kids by myself, which I'm going to try really hard to not turn it into just Pixar and Wendy's.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I'm not used to this. And sometimes if you just when you have little kids, sometimes it feels like, the day's really dragging on here. And you have to be careful though, because then all of a sudden they're 7, they're 10, they're 17, they're 25.
But you said you've been taking Matthew to jiu-jitsu. Tell us about that. How did you get started?
But that's one thing is I think to find those activities that are wholesome that you can do together.
Totally.
And that's what you want to
with him.
And especially like I have 3 boys. It's so funny for Laura because she grew up with only sisters. So she doesn't quite, she's like, do boys do this? I'm like, yeah, we do. Like the fighting.
Yeah.
Like just wanting to wrestle and fight.
Peter jumped on my back yesterday when I was in bed sleeping, and he started wrestling me, right?
Yeah.
And I grab him around the neck, and I'm holding him down, and he's like, 5. I'm like, what? He's like, the 5. Why are you saying 5? And then I remembered we have this rule that when we fight, if he says 1, he can beat the heck out of me. 10, I'll destroy him. So he decides as he's wrestling how hard he wants me to wrestle.
Oh,
so he'll be like 7, and I'll start wrestling him. And like 2, and I've got to kind of like
that's
relax.
like that's the old handicap setting on Street Fighter. You can set the difficulty setting.
That's awesome. So, that's exactly right.
But I love finding time with boys, and I think one thing for men and boys to bond, like women tend to bond face to face, like talking to each other.
Yeah.
Men tend to bond side to side.
Yeah,
like we're doing something
together. Yeah.
Working on what are we doing, and so but it is fun. So so we've started doing that.
So how did you first hear about jiu-jitsu? Taylor Marshall? And you're in Texas. Do you ever like hang out with Taylor Marshall? Do you go jiu-jitsu?
I have not come across Taylor Marshall.
Doesn't he do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
I think he used to. I think there are some people who maybe they'd want to see us in a match. Who knows?
Of a different sort, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. No, it was Cobra Kai.
Okay.
So you asked us, what do Laura and I watch together? And so we were watching Cobra Kai, and we just thought, okay, we want the kids to get into a martial art, to get exercise, to learn how to defend themselves. And so I looked up, and I've been interested in martial arts for a while, just like reading about them. Like, what is the most effective martial art? Like, honestly, to learn. And we found a gym nearby us. It's just like a 10-minute drive. And we went to a few different gyms, but this one just felt like the absolute real deal. Like, a lot of the guys who are the trainers there are from, like, Ukraine or Eastern Europe. Like the boxing coach, he was like basically coaching the equivalent of like Eastern European Olympic boxing. And he's like this short guy, but he'll be with me and he'll just be like, pow, 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 pow. I'm like, man, you're like, you're like 50 or 60, but like you still got moves like lightning just to show stuff. And a lot of the classes, the kid class at the same time as the adult class. And so we go and practice and learn, and then Matthew, he just loves the most. So he'll go like, okay, let's try this later. So we'll do a mixture of Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu.
So when you said you looked into what was the most effective martial art, what did you settle on?
I would say honestly, probably Brazil. Well, it's effective. Like when you're out there, if you have to like be in a real fight with people, I think you need like a combination of kickboxing or Muay Thai kickboxing, but especially Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
And is that what you're doing, those two things?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's amazing that you started doing both of them.
Yeah.
So how many times a week are you going?
Well, this is a topic of discussion in the Horn household, how often I can go. I remember many years, like a year ago, Laura said, you should get a hobby. I'm like, but I love being home with the kids and I love writing. Like my hobby is just I'm writing another book for Catholic Answers. You really need to have a hobby. And then Laura makes a joke, like what wives would say. It's like, you need a hobby, but one that doesn't cost money and one where you're not leaving the house and I have to watch the kids.
Like, okay, so limited options.
And so, but it works that for a lot of them, I can actually take the kids. So they do a class and I do a class.
That's cool.
So I'm doing this. And then if the kids go, it's usually maybe like 3 or 4 nights. Wow. They also have it during the day, though. So there's a small jiu-jitsu class during the day. And I might go and there's only like 3 or 4 other people. And I am like the whitest white belt that I'm like the vanilla ice level white belt. And I'm just there and I just tell them, you can just throw me around. I'll try to learn by osmosis.
So what I found weird, because I went to a couple of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes, and maybe I'll go back, but it was just 5 o'clock at night is not a great time for us.
Sure.
But anyway, what I found weird was you're just immediately on top of somebody. someone's like, it's like aggressive cuddling. I'm like, I know, I don't like doing this with strangers or anyone not my wife.
Right.
How did you get over that?
You know what? It didn't bother me as much.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like we just want to learn these techniques, because the reason I think Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is probably one of the most practical martial arts you can learn is that in a real fight, it's not like karate on TV. It's not like
I wish it was,
but it's not.
It's
usually
not. You're on the floor.
Usually you're on the ground with someone. And when you're on the ground, then it's like, can you immobilize and subdue? Honestly, the most important martial art, like self-defense technique to learn is how to not get in a bad situation and how to escape a bad situation quickly. That is the honest, like, if someone's really honest about self-defense, it's to learn how to not get in a fight and to learn how to escape a bad situation as quickly as possible. This is not the movies. Like, you can get, and that's why, you have to have a sense of realism about things. But if you're in a situation that you cannot escape, you want to, jiu-jitsu allows you to maintain control over another person, even if they're larger than you are.
So has this kind of given you more pause when you see people down the street wondering, like maybe before you did martial arts, you're like, I could take that guy, I could take that guy. Now, did you realize you're not so sure because who knows, maybe they're training and maybe they're better than you, even though they look smaller or...
Oh, I never would think like I could take him or that person. I'd rather fight my words. Excuse me, sir. Would you like to have a debate? We can have it on Pipes of the Aquinas to resolve our...
Socratic dialogue you into the ground.
Right. Yeah, it also helps to build up humility in that regard, that as you do it, you see, people who've been doing this for a long time
are actually better.
Oh, yeah, but they learn and they're willing to work with you. It's not about ego.
Yeah.
And so that's been good.
But
what
I found with other martial arts, like when I was a kid and I did those things.
Oh, gosh.
One was called Zendokai, one was called Taekwondo, obviously. And but there was a real workout there. Whereas what I've found is when you're just learning the basic moves of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I don't leave completely drenched.
That's correct. Well, when you're learning, and I've only been doing it for a few months, so once again, whitest white belt out there. Yeah. But when you're just starting with the positions, you're right. It's like, I'm not really working out that much. But then when you actually engage, which is called rolling, so when you actually go with someone, that I get more sore and worked out than even when I do boxing, because you're with a guy, and a lot of the guys I work with are 20 or 30 pounds bigger than I am. And you're wrapped around someone, it's essentially a lot of isometric exercise. You're like pushing with all your might to prevent someone from choking you into submission, essentially. Wow. And that has a realism to it when you're engaging others. So yeah, but it's been fun, and I think it's important as Christians. We need to have balance in our lives. So we need to make sure that we are spiritually healthy, that we are physically healthy, that we're financially healthy, we're emotionally healthy. I think it can be hard when people think that the path to holiness is just focusing on the spiritual aspect of our lives. Now, that should be the anchor to it. But there's a lot of people that get kooky if they focus so much on their spiritual health that then it's the same as someone who only focuses on their physical health and they turn into a musclehead and they're not praying and they're not going to mass. They're dysfunctional. But somebody who is very spiritually healthy, but neglects the temple of their body, that's also bad, because we're not souls trapped in bodies. We are bodies.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought about the video.